we touch with the mind grows. This is something that I repeat here quite often. Now, anyone who has explored meditation with some degree of dedication will have recognized that the attention itself leads the energy. So what we touch with the mind draws energy to that object, to that location, whether it's an object of the body, a location within the body, or whether it's an object of the mind. Whatever we are focusing on, we feed, we nourish. So can your attention be hijacked like a parasite hijacks the life force, the minerals, the nutrients within you? What leads the touch of the mind and usurps the nourishment of the attention itself? This will be our topic today. Repetition is how we learn. It's how we build skills. It's how we shape the body. It's how we shape emotions. And of course, the content, the workings, the view of the mind. This is all achieved through repetition. And repetition of identity is self-sustaining. When we are exploring, say, Hermetic alchemy, if you're looking at Franz Barden's texts as a place to start, he discusses autosuggestion. And this is a form of self-hypnosis. And this is essentially, we are brainwashing ourselves when we engage in repetitive acts. This is why awareness of our repetitive habits, mentally, astrally, and physically, are incredibly important so that we can stop nourishing that which no longer needs nourishment, that which is not facilitating our movement towards where we are trying to go. So autosuggestion, the basics of that would be when you wake up in the morning, you repeat in the present tense the command that you wish to be fulfilled, and before bed. This is basically like modern day affirmations. Now, other things that fall into this category, again, anything that we repeat. So that would be sutras, prayers, sutras, these songs of meaning on spiritual paths. Those are repeated. Mantras, again, prayers, and they're like affirmations, or can be. They have meaning imbued, energy imbued into each word, and then that is repeated. Prayer recitation, sutras, mantras, all very similar things. Now, because we are able to influence ourselves through these autosuggestion or self-hypnosis, affirmation type of explorations with such a strong degree of success, we want to be very cognitive of the relationship between distraction and the repeated messages that might be coming from outside ourselves, right? So repetitive bombardment of relatively singular messages, relatively singular ideologies that are hidden within distraction. This is a very, very interesting thing to explore, because we're all scrolling these days. You're scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever you like to play with, and then you get maybe shorts on YouTube, then you get like ads, right? So you're scrolling, there's interesting things that catch your attention, high excitement, novelty, all these things, and then you have ads, and the ads are a little different to the regular scrolling, and this is done like algorithmically in a way that's meant to attract you to the ad so that it captures your attention. In the ocean of distraction, right, the little islands of attention that are somewhat repetitive will, underneath the surface, have an easier time lodging into the subconscious. So because it's lodging into the subconscious and it's sandwiched in distraction. The ads or the ideology, whatever it might be, is very, very hard to recognize, right? We're not focusing on it because we're back to the distraction, back to the distraction, back to the distraction. So this is something that we want to be aware of. Repetition is how we learn. Repetition is how we build skills, how we shape the body, as we said, shape the emotion, shape the mind, and how we cultivate an identity through repeated acts of mind, repeated acts of emotion, repeated acts of body. So what is it that's being repeated that we are learning? What are the repeated acts of mind and emotion and eventually body that we are building in to this emanation we call ourselves? We want to be aware of this so that we can continue on the spiritual path without all the energy that we are building and consolidating and channeling. Of course, the building, the consolidation has its phases, and then of course you're conductive, you become a conduit, you're channeling. What is that high influx of energy going to stimulate, to reverberate out of this emanation? That's why it's so important that we are equanimous and aware and constantly looking at our motivations and any identity that might be potentially getting in the way of the expression of that energy and using or hijacking that energy for its own nefarious purposes, whether that is internally cultivated identity, internally accidentally cultivated identity, or externally imposed identity. So we always want to be looking at these aspects of experience. The mechanisms used to make change in ourselves, of course, can be used at us to make change in ourselves from external sources. So these mechanisms are things like repetition, novelty, anything that is different that grabs our attention, of course, will be baked into these survival instincts, because anything that is a break from baseline could be a predator, etc. So novelty grabs our attention with incredible ease. Repetition, novelty, any time that, like we said, there is a similar script or story. Story is important because when we are on this path, what we are dissolving and alchemizing is our story. This story of identity. This story, this script of identity, can be very, very easily maneuvered to feed and nourish another ideology of various kinds. So, this is like an animus of an ideology. It grips you, and then that identity gets subsumed by a hive mind across individuals and groups. Repetition, novelty, and similarity of story. How do you know you're talking to the animus of something? When you can predict everything somebody is going to say because of whatever group they happen to be a part of. You're no longer really talking to that person anymore. You're talking to an ideology. This is the same as, when you're hanging out with people who are, say, drinking alcohol. There is a point where it's fun and you're connecting, and it can actually build relationships and help with connection between people. And then there's a point where you're no longer talking with the people, you're talking with the animus of alcohol. The person's no longer really there. And the same applies to story, to identity, to whatever ideology may be grasping the individual or the group. This is rampant in spiritual communities. It's rampant in any type of cult, and of course rampant in any group, right? Group connections are really a big thing for this. We think these things. We use these words. We believe these things. We are good people because we believe, think, act, etc. in this way. And this is very, very addictive because the addiction is to the acceptance of a group and tribe. And we'll discuss this more as this little foray into Psyops unfolds. So what narrative is this story attempting to recruit this identity, my identity, for? This is a good question to ask. When you are hearing repetitive messages all the time from different sources, and it seems to be that everyone is saying the same thing at the same time from many, many different directions, what is that story, right? Story is addicted to story. And anyone of a weaker energetic field gets magnetized towards a stronger energetic field. And this is what charismatic people naturally have, is a strong magnetic field. There is alignment of mind, emotion, and body. So it naturally is cohesive, it's magnetic, it pulls people in. The more so what does this mean? It means that we are looking for alignment of our own mental, astral, and vital centers, bodies, and fields, because it gives us that resonant alignment of energy. And this is much easier to do when you are allowing yourself to be subsumed into somebody else's story or somebody else's alignment. And this is one of the reasons that many stall out on the spiritual path, is that we give up our own sovereignty on the path to rest in or lean into the story of a particular system. And of course, the story of a particular system has baked into it always cultural phenomena and all kinds of things, because traditional systems have always developed over many, many, in some cases centuries, and there is culture built in, there's belief structures built in. So we want to be very aware of this. Is the whole world polarized over the same issue at the same time? You take from small group dynamics and you expand that to bigger group dynamics, right? Is everyone polarized over the same issue at the same time? This is a very good indication that we might have something else at play. In the military, you have the most basic of strategies, which is called cover and move. This is where, let's say you have two people, one person lays down fire and the other person moves to a new position. Or if you're going by yourself, if you're going to move to a new position, you cover yourself, bang, 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 you shoot as you move. So the idea is distraction, novelty, survival, repetition, whatever it is. Distraction, if it's empty hand martial arts, you're covering with say like checks and balance stealing and all this stuff while you move. So you appear as if out of nowhere from a different direction, a different place. This happens psychologically. This is what pickpockets use. The street performers who are always stealing stuff from you, they cover, distraction, novelty, hey, look at this, while your attention, the currency of that energy, that awareness is on whatever you're looking at, whatever they're guiding it to. They're stealing your wallet or whatever's going on. If you're traveling overseas, it's always, hey, where are you from? And they try to get beside you. Hey, have you been to over here? Let me take your attention away from yourself and away from me, because I'm beside you now. Have you seen that place? And they're stealing your wallet. This is basic strategy, cover and move. So if the entire, everyone you speak to, if the entire culture and community is polarized, positive or negative, over the same issue at the same time, could that be cover? Could that be cover while something is moving in the background? These are things that we want to be aware of. And cultivation along the spiritual path allows us to retain some sense of sovereignty and immovability. or we could say the ability to surf the waves of opinion and of, strategy, of cover and move, of novelty, all these things, to surf these without the story of identity being caught in the wave and being dragged in the undertow. This is a big part of the path. What we are working on is always unity with more refined vibratory experience, aspects of reality and emptiness, light and emptiness, and sovereignty from the denser aspects so that they can alchemize and merge with the more refined aspects, and the entire emanation takes on a more refined alchemical interplay moment by moment. And this is a huge part of what we're doing. So you can see how the external and the internal are often working very similarly. They become the same thing. So if you own that internal sovereignty through dissolution or resolution of the habitual addictive story of identity, that identity is less likely to be usurped by other things. How can you steal something that isn't there? How can you hijack something that doesn't exist? Or startle it, or noveltyize it, right? It's a very good way to sustain our personal, we could say, like, space boundaries, or that truth underlying things, that thread of truth. This brings us to the training, sense gate cultivation, and how this can lead to immunity through understanding the yin and yang phases, the becoming and unbecoming phases as they express through the sense gates. So if we have cultivated through visualization at each sense gate, right, the becoming phase as it expresses through each sense gate, if we've cultivated this, then we will be very, very aware from zero to hero of the arising of sensory experience, what's going on at each layer. Because we've worked on building this, we will understand how each sense gate is being stimulated and the processes of cognitive and emotional interplay that are, creating and running through the story of identity as that wave at each sense gate builds in its becoming phase. If we've worked on the unbecoming phase, we will be aware of the cessation of that wave as it starts to fall away and move back to neutral, as that stimulus starts to secede at each sense gate. Because of this, we are freed from the identity latching on to any phase of that wave and going, this is yummy, me, identity. So the basic sense gate training is incredibly important. This applies to thoughts as well, any emotion, because these are experienced through sensory experience and are stimulated through sensory experience. Of course, you have the sense gate of mind. These are all can be stimulated through sensory experience. So, this aids in freedom from influence through that gate because we know and are familiar with the whole wave. The identity is not attaching at any point of the whole wave, which allows that wave to simply continue to roll through. There's no blockages. The becoming and unbecoming phases in visualization and internally created sense perception, these allow us to see how story might be being thrust upon us and how the sense gates aid in grabbing that. So of course, more layers of freedom. And the environmentally stimulated sense perception, of course, like we mentioned with the pickpocket who touches, or cover and move, the pickpocket who's pointing out all the sites where you should have your attention because it shouldn't be on me because, I'm stealing your wallet. These environmentally stimulated sense perceptions can, of course, be through media and through anything else. if you evolve through the need of the identity to coagulate and stick to sense perception, to stick to story for the identity's own sense of security and comfort and safety, then this leads to, once again, the potential for a more free and truthful perceptual reality to be laid out before us. Awareness that is free of identification with mental content or sense perception at all times is an incredibly useful tool. Because again, awareness, that attention, that attentiveness, that perception itself is currency. It is bringing and guiding energy to any stagnation point. Because of this, if that is not free, that attention, that energy will then build on any stagnation, and that built up energy, if it's given a story, a little thread that can be pulled, then we are being, have the high potential to be manipulated. Okay, so this episode today is about the mechanisms, of course, the repetition, the novelty that is at play in from the internal and external environments, right? Yin and yang phase training as a means of working through this. And of course, we have the repetition and distraction interplays that we want to be aware of. Autosuggestion, self-hypnosis for our own growth, our own training, right? What you repeat, you build. So what is it that you are repeating? This is a question we want to ask ourselves and look into psychologically through the mental body, center and field, through the astral body, center and field, the emotional interplay of energy, and physically. You get more of what you practice. So what is it that you are practicing, and who or what is guiding your practice? Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. And for those interested in training, you can check out the website. You can become a member there, and you get access to the courses in Tai Chi, in Qigong meditation, Hermetic alchemy, and also as a member on the website, you receive access to the Zenden, which is a Q&A video reference library. And this is where any questions you have that you are looking or moving towards clarification with on the path or on the training, I upload video answers for you there. So that's a great resource for your practice and your growth. Also, there are retreats that I teach, so you want to keep an eye out for those. These are intensive retreats. There's a lot of profound transformation, a lot of energy, and the entirety of the retreats is through transmission of an ascending, we might say, or a refining vibrational scale. So we are constantly refining and then integrating that refinement, alchemizing the densities within us, refining, and there's a lot of learning that goes on there and a lot of growth. All right, maybe I'll see you there. Have fun, practice, bye.